Hello, I'm Rosy again. In the last video about sign language, I briefly talked about what sign languages are, the general misconceptions, and some most used sign languages. So, in today's video, I'm going to elaborate a bit more. To start off, let's look at the history of the study of sign language. 360 BC, in ancient Greece, the philosopher Plato suggested that if we had no voice or tongue, should we not, like the deaf and dumb, make signs with hand and head and the rest of the body? This demonstrates the recognition of sign languages can at least be dated back to ancient Greece. In 16th century, the French philosopher Rene suggested that the sign language of deaf people represented examples of true human languages, and similar beliefs were shared by 19th century scholars such as Edward Taylor in Britain. For a number of reasons, the research of sign language declined during the early 20th century and many of the early insights were forgotten. One of the reasons was due to the world wars, especially World War II. Although the deaf didn't have to go to the front line, they were targeted, especially by the Nazis. Since the 1980s, sign language research has begun to become a truly international field of research, with research papers published on sign language all over the world, from South to South Asia, to the Middle East, Africa, and South America. And as the last video suggested, sign language were added to the field of linguistics in 1988. Now let's talk about some facts about sign language. How brain damage affects sign language. According to Adam Schumbury and Trevor Johnston, when fluent signers have a stroke or brain injury, they may lose the ability to sign, but not to make imitative or non-sign gestures. Thus, it means that they may be able to produce signs, but not to put them in correct grammatical configurations. They may be able to produce sentences, but with the signs formed incorrectly, creating a strange accent. They may be able to sign quickly and easily, but without making any sense. This leads to the next point. Although sign languages are produced by body movements and observed by eyes, research has shown that sign and spoken languages are processed by the brain in similar ways. The human brain is divided into two halves. The left hemisphere controls many language functions, while the right hemisphere controls many visual spatial skills. But this does not mean that sign language must be entirely processed by the right hemisphere just because, unlike spoken languages, they are visual languages that make use of space. Research into the sign communication and visual spatial skills of deaf people with brain damage in the 1980s shows that this is not the case. Deaf signers with damage to certain areas of the left hemisphere showed very similar types of aphasia to hearing people who use spoken languages. Signers with left hemisphere damage had difficulties with sign language grammatical skills, and yet retained the ability to draw. Moreover, some signers with right hemisphere damage exhibited a breakdown of visual spatial skills, and yet were still able to use some key aspects of sign language grammar. Nowadays, the modern technologies are making it increasingly clear that face-to-face communication that is signed or spoken uses the right hemisphere. Now on to our last point. Some people mistakenly believe that sign languages cannot be real languages because they lack a written form. However, many spoken languages such as dialects around the world today that have no writing system and no written literature, and a few would question whether these are real languages. Sign language writing system come in two forms. Glossing and notation. Glossing refers to the practice of using spoken language translations of signs, together with special symbols to represent the use of space and facial expression. Notation, in contrast, involves the use of special symbols to represent the physical features of sign language itself. The most well-known examples would be Stokoe notation, first created by William Stokoe. Thank you for watching this video and see you in the next video.